I spent this whole time adjusting the camera.
I still see the pink no camera Scott. There's a face. Oh, I didn't edit the title of the episode in the live stream, and I already went live, so people can see me update this text real quick. Auctions and bidding mechanics. Wednesday, July 8th. All right, cool. Did it. It's Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about auction and bidding mechanics in games. So on the 4th of July, we go to, I've noticed because you two and us have both been going to a lot more live music shows as the Pandoodle wound down. And
we just go whenever someone we know comes to town.
Yep.
We go. And it just so happened that some of the groups that we go to see, right, especially like, I guess a few years ago, all these K-pop groups that, it used to be incredibly rare for any of them to come here, but now they're coming here all the freaking time, right? And so it was like a huge upswing, and now there's a downswing because all the groups that I liked are old and either done or kind of done or semi-done, and I don't really like these new groups. And so all the ones that are coming now, it's like, oh yeah, come see Stray Kids at like City Field, and it's like, I don't like Stray Kids, and I'm not seeing even anyone. Even if I love them, I wouldn't go to City Field.
What music performance would get me to go to a place like City Field? Is there anything?
Oh yeah, I could think of a few.
I mean, things that are possible, because I can't get, like, the Meatloaf reunion tour.
So, number one, me. I would go if I was performing.
Yeah.
Right. Two, I would go if there was some sort of situation where I'm not, like, I'm, like, a backstage, or I'm, like, right frickin' there.
Oh,
It
yeah.
doesn't matter that it's a big
Like,
arena.
you're on the guest list, and you're hanging out in the green room, yeah.
I don't have to pay some absurd amount of money to
But
get
I'm talking,
right
like, what is the musical act you would go GA on the field at a giant stadium concert?
It would have to be somebody who... Or I'm not really concerned that I can see the person necessarily. I'm okay looking at like a big video screen, and I don't even really care if they're like playing live necessarily, because it's like going to be like, right? But it's a person who puts on a performance that is an arena like performance, right?
Yeah.
So you can think of like, it's like you could go see Freddie Mercury at like Live Aid. It's like you don't give a shit if you're way in the back, right? It's like you go see someone like Psy. It's like you don't give a shit that you're way in the back, right? It's like you're there to be with the people, and it's a crazy time, and everyone's going woo, right? It's like that's the, metal show, right? There's certain metal shows where bands that can just get everyone to go wild.
It's actually interesting you frame it that way.
You can't see or hear the band even, right? It's like because you're there for the vibe.
So it's funny you say that, because that's kind of what my opening bit is about, because my new thing, the reason we're seeing a lot of shows is now anytime I'm listening to music and I think, oh, right, I like this band, I immediately, as soon as I think after I think of this, I check to see, hey, are they still alive? And if so, are they touring in a way where I could see them?
And you know what? It's also good to check for that, even if you're not interested in live shows or you don't live in New York City and bands don't come to where you live in the sticks. Because if your band, like, you don't see any humans that exist and you don't see any shows ever and you don't see any merch, it's probably AI.
Yep.
It's generated music, and you can block it and not listen to it anymore.
But it was also, I've gone to a lot of different kinds of music performances over the years. But one thing I've never done until now is gone to a top tier DJ set. Like, I've seen DJs, but I've never been to a venue where what I would consider like a world-class DJ was performing live. I've seen like B tier and under DJs live.
The reason there are quite a few of those that I would love to go see, but the problem is a lot of them are performing at things like Ultra Music Fest in Miami or clubs in Ibiza. And the thing is, while the music there is music I listen to regularly, and hearing it live on some enormous sound system would be a lot of fun.
Yep.
A lot of times those places are spring breaky, druggy, fests of not my vibe.
Yep.
That's why I don't go to those.
But there's something about the crowd vibe. So I'll in the future, like on a Thursday in the future, I'll talk about we should do a show on DJs and DJ sets. I think but anyway, so we went to this Baker Matt and two other people I didn't care about, but Baker Matt is what I wanted to see. He's a Dutch DJ that I've been following for quite some time, and I'm a fan. So I saw he was performing in New York, and it was an all day from like 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. DJ block party, and it was fantastic. It was an absolutely fantastic show. But while I thought, and I've never been to a set like that before, I'm gonna like hang out near the back and just listen because it's a DJ. Like I don't need to like be up front in the middle of like the crazy crowd right at the stage. But we ended up right at the front next to the stage because the crowd was into it to a degree to where you've got to be in the middle of that crowd. But
that's how it is.
So it was fantastic. But the thing that stood out to me has nothing to do with the music set because there's been a phenomenon in basically all sectors, from airlines to entertainment. This is happening everywhere. It's the rise of the premium economy. And what I mean by that, you see that, you're going to fly coach, you're going to fly somewhere. If you're poor and you got to fly, you fly coach. If you're poor and this is the one concert you're going to, you're buying the cheap seats. If you're rich, like stupid rich, like guillotine rich, then you just buy business class because money means nothing to you. You buy the premium experience. If you're at the DJ set, you buy the bottle service at the dedicated table. And it costs like 100 times what a regular ticket costs.
Plays in your backyard.
Like that kind of shit. But in between the $50 concert ticket and the $5,000 concert ticket, there's the premium economy. And this is the space. It's aimed at either middle class and up people who like a thing but don't do it that often, so they really want to like get the most out of it when they do it, or rich people who do the thing a lot. But basically at this concert, they had like $50 in the crowd, and I am too old to spend from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the hot summer with no shade on a concrete pad standing in a dense crowd of people. I can't do that. And the bottle service they had was thousands of dollars, and it was super sad. It was just a little cordoned off area with the shittiest oligarch-looking people you have ever seen sitting there looking at their phones, clearly not having a good time. But then there was a VIP section, and premium economy, that kind of thing, typically costs like 2 to 5 times, but usually around 2 or 3 times what the economy thing costs. Like flying premium economy, it was like 2 or 3x the price of a coach ticket. And it's not 2 or 3 times better, but it's like better enough to where if you can get there, it is like just a much more pleasant experience. So we got the premium economy version of access to this concert. And what that meant is we paid about 3 times what a cheap ticket would have cost. We had access to an area with shade that we could just sit down, that wasn't next to the stage. There were indoor bathrooms that were actual bathrooms. Everyone else just had a line of horrific porta potties. And we had this little private like shunt that took us right up to the stage, and we could just stand next to the stage if we wanted to. And I don't go to like 5 DJ sets a week, so it was actually real worth it to pay the 3x to have like the way better experience to the one DJ set we go to a summer. But this concept is creeping in everywhere, and I feel like there's a show we could do around this like stratification on a different time. But that's not the time for this. It's Tuesday. You got any news?
Do we have news? Yes, we do. So I do want to point out something before I talk about the news item itself. Is the website the news comes from.
Rascal News.
I don't know if we've had a Tuesday show recently enough that I've talked about Rascal News. So the nominations for the Diana Jones Award came out, and one of the nominations was Rascal News for like excellent tabletop news reporting. And I was like, what's Rascal News? I haven't heard of that, and I need some tabletop news reporting. And I went to check it out, and they had stories. They had a story about the tabletop people who work at the tabletop stores in New York City, right? The Brooklyn Strat, the Hex & Co., and the Uncommon specifically, and how the employees of those 3 stores were unionizing. And it's like, this story right, is like not reported anywhere else at all. It's relevant to my interests like 99%. And it's like they had an actual reporter go and dig up all the relevant info, all the info about this story. They had it, right? They covered everything. So I didn't have to go ask questions. It's like it's perfectly, like they wrote up the story as good as a journalist can.
I hate that
And I
you're
was like,
describing basic journalism, but yet in the year 2025, it's like a revolutionary breath of fresh air.
Yeah, exactly. And so there were other, I don't know if I'm going to say they should win the Diana Jones Award, though I wouldn't be upset with that choice because, of course, everyone who gets nominated for that Diana Jones Award pretty much is deserving, right? You can't knock any of them. Very rarely can you, do they nominate improperly? It's always a tough choice, but I immediately paid real money to get through the not really a paywall, because I think if you just give them your email, you get through the paywall for $0. But I joined their Discord and their page, their whole thing, and I'm like, dang, where has this been? And since then they've come out with many more stories. The one that got the most traction, the most talking, the most hubbub is the one we're going to talk about for news right now, and that concerns DriveThruRPG. So if you don't know, DriveThruRPG is a website where you can buy tabletop RPGs, mostly RPG PDFs, right? It's just an e-commerce site, and if you make a tabletop RPG, you probably send them your PDF, and then they sell it for you, and that's...
I have, until now, heavily used DriveThruRPG, as have many of the people I both play indie RPGs with and who make indie RPGs.
So this, I didn't realize, DriveThruRPG has like changed hands and merged and sold several times. It is currently owned by a company called Wolves of Freeport Incorporated, which used to be named One Bookshelf Incorporated, and One Bookshelf merged with Roll20, the people who make the Roll20 online virtual tabletop app, right? So the virtual tabletop Roll20 merged with One Bookshelf, and that's basically Wolves of Freeport is what it's called, but they run DriveThruRPG.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Is that the Freeport we know? Probably not.
No,
the one I'm thinking of.
Not, no, that Freeport is Ronin Publishing, I believe. And I don't...
That was the brief period when I dabbled in any Dungeons & Dragons that wasn't just Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, I think it's Green Ronin Publishing, I believe, is the Freeport RPG stuff. Anyway, so what happened on DriveThruRPG was somebody, right, there's a game called Rebel Scum, which is a Star Wars parody, a Star Wars parody tabletop RPG.
Yep.
Where you're rebels and you fight the fascist empire. This game is old. It's not a new game.
Yeah.
It's an old game.
I've heard good things about it. I've never played it, but it's come up many times.
Yeah, I mean, come on, with that name and that theme, it's like you barely even have to be good at make a good game to go with it. It's like, essentially, you're getting Star Wars without paying a Star Wars license. And the game's like 4 years old already. And somebody reported to DriveThruRPG with like the reporting system, because they have a reporting system like, hey, this game's breaks the rules.
To be really clear, a Nazi used the reporting system.
Yes, a Nazi used the reporting system. And they decided to remove the game from their site because it breaks the rule of, I guess, specific calls for violence. Not because, they're like, I think specifically the problem was in the forward where it mentioned Republicans with the letter K instead of the letter C, and punching them or whatever. I forget the exact words. I can look them up.
Yep.
But
here, I'll read from Rascal. The infringing section of the game minces no words about his moral and ethical position. The author's foreword asks if players want to, quote, punch a space Nazi right in their stupid, jackbooting space Nazi face. It clearly states that Rebel Scum is not for people who believe in white power, vaccine deniers, bigots of all stripes, etc.
Yeah. But anyway, it was specifically the mention of Republicans with the K that they were upset about, right? And so there's obviously all sorts of topics that we've talked about in the past that we don't need to repeat ourselves, like the paradox of intolerance and all. You know all that already. There's no reason for us to spend 90 minutes going over it again. We know. The one thing I think is new, at least a new thought for me in this story regarding this well-trodden ground, is that gamers, I think especially, feel a need to, define any sort of, any system, not just your game system, but like all the systems of the world with a stringent, like ironclad rule set, especially RPG gamers, right? And so for DriveThruRPG, they felt like, the people who run DriveThruRPG, they're not fash, right? It's like they're on the good people side, right? They're not voting for Republicans.
However, they are cowards for hiding behind what you're describing.
Right, exactly. Their mistake is having this gamer need to have a set of rules, a published set of rules in a language that governs their decision making, and then they feel forced to then adhere to those rules stringently. Right?
Now, one thing I do slightly disagree with. I don't think they feel forced. I think it's actually something far more subtle and possibly even more sinister, even if they don't realize it. I think a lot of the kinds of people you describe struggle to engage socially with complex issues like that and are afraid of making moral judgments and decisions for a lot of reasons. So as a result, these policies are more to save them from the personal burden of having to take a stand and make a decision, because they can then point to a procedure and they are just the enactor of the well-written procedure. I'm just the messenger. They're cowards. Very
well. That could also be a psychological explanation. But we know, the point is, gamers love rules, right? And the thing that I want to say is that not everything in life has to be governed by some strict set of rules. And not always, but most of the time, the need for rules and systems to govern something is mostly proportional to the consequences of that system. So, for example, if you are an actual justice system dealing out prison sentences, or hopefully not death penalties, but that's how it is, right? Or, making serious decisions like that. Yeah, you better have laws and judges and juries and all sorts of procedures, right, to ensure maximum fairness.
But even then, what are the words you said, judges? Because even legal systems have the point at which a bunch of humans have to look at the situation and make a value judgment that is not beholden to the rest of the system.
Or at the very least, judge the words, because no set of words can be ironclad perfect in all crazy situations, and you need
there's no magic language like Kellis speaks to cast magic in The Prince of Nothing.
Right. But when the stakes are lower, right? I need to decide who I will invite to my birthday party, right? These stakes are low, very low. You don't need to have rules.
But nerds will always want rules because they are afraid of telling their friend they don't like that much they can't come to the party. That's it.
It's okay to just arbitrarily, just how you feel. Like, I'm going to invite Rim. Why? Because he's been my friend for a long time, and if he was at my party, it would make the party more fun. I'm not inviting you. Why not? Because I don't like you. I don't feel like it. I don't want you at my party. Or I don't have to give you a reason. It's my party, and I don't want to invite you. Tough shit. I don't need to come up with some set of rules for you to argue with, right? It's like my party, stakes are low. I can just decide arbitrarily. It's not something that's public. It's not, there's no right to come to my party. The government is not involved. It's a private party. Deal with it. And so having your RPG published on DriveThruRPG when you could publish it just somewhere else, the stakes are low. They don't need to have rules. They could just not publish rules. They could, if they wanted to publish a rule, they could just say, the people who run this site will decide what, based on their own values, what will be allowed on this site and not. We will not explain why, or maybe we will. Tough shit. We decide. It's our website. You don't like it? You can make another website. It's just this one website that we own. Therefore, we rule. Eat a dick. and they could have just said, yeah, this game's anti-fascist, what's allowed, and that game's Nazi trash, it's not allowed. Why? We don't have a set of rules. Just because we're good people, that's what we decided. And that's when you have low stakes. Sometimes, if you're good people, that's what you should do.
But
because as soon as you put up rules, you not only what Rim said about protecting yourself, whatever. As soon as you put up rules, you give the good and the bad people something to like target, right? It's like if you just don't have rules, what can the bad people can't say, but my Fash game follows all the rules. It's like, yeah, you're opening the door to them as soon as you have rules to begin with. Just don't have them. Just say, I don't like you. I know you're a piece of shit, and so I'm not going to let your games on my site. End of story. Now they got nothing to argue with other than, well, we don't like you either. And I'm like, good.
But as always, remember, if you look at RPGs, like any discussion on Dungeons and Dragons over the years, the majority of all the conversation is people trying to have mechanistic systems in their role-playing to resolve conflict that is fundamentally between humans.
Yep. All right. So this story blew up everywhere. There's tons more other things to say about it, but that's the main thing I want to say about it is that when the stakes are low and you don't need rules, it's sometimes better to not have rules and just, if it's a private thing, just be in charge.
Well, especially when the world is the way it is, principled stances on small things mean a lot. And you have a lot of power as a human. Like the people who run this site have a lot of power to push back against what's happening, and they chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
In some other dire Hell World news, Microsoft just laid off 9,000 people heavily.
That's a big layoff, but Microsoft's real big.
Yeah, now Microsoft has around 230,000 full-time employees before these layoffs. So it's a relatively small layoff in terms of Microsoft, but at the same time, this is not the first round. They've actually laid off a lot of people, and they've heavily targeted middle management, especially around Xbox. And my LinkedIn has exploded, and my Discord has exploded with tons and tons of people I know or tangentially know who have all been laid off because we know a lot of people who work in games. The AAA is starting to fall apart for obvious reasons. Microsoft, this is one more step along the way. But what's really interesting to me is that, especially in the gaming space, the thing they're really focusing on is they're cutting out what they're saying is all the layers of middle management. They want individual contributors, like the people who directly work on the code and game design, reporting much more directly to the super senior managers. And on one hand, there are times and places for that. Like, I don't want to get into a whole like defensive bureaucracy, but there are pros and cons to that strategy depending on the size and nature of your organization. And I'll leave it at that. What's worrying to me is that this is juxtaposed with Microsoft heavily expanding its investment in data centers for specialized computing and AI. And there are dots to connect that don't look great if you juxtapose those two.
Yeah. I think it's just, consequences as we see the AAA game business model has been declining, is already down in the dumps, and it's just...
I mean, what AAA game does either of us play that isn't a Nintendo game?
Right. There's still remnants left that are still yet to collapse, even though it's sort of been obviously falling apart. It's like, you're just watching it slowly crumble one floor at a time, and it's like, oh, there goes another floor.
Yep.
And there's probably still other floors that still have to go.
And I think it's partly Microsoft, like Xbox kind of lost all the console wars. Like, you either have a PlayStation because you don't have a gaming PC, everyone has a Switch, you have a gaming PC if you're a turbo nerd, and like, who buys an Xbox in the year 2025?
There are people with Xboxes out there. There are people, they don't have like a gaming PC, or they don't know that you can plug one into a television, and the games that they want to play are on Xbox, even though they are on other systems also.
But I see definitely there's a trend of PlayStation is starting to eat away at the market of people who don't have PCs.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to like a used, a gaming store, it's like you see PS4, you don't see Xboxes.
Yeah.
It's like people don't really seem to want, so.
All right. Skip my Geek Bite for another time. Jump to things of the day. I won't forget the things of the day this time. But anyway, things of the day. So Well, I rarely try to link to the same like creator more than once as a thing of the day, unless there's a good reason to. But Joel Haver, who we've linked to before, fantastic creator of internet comedy. He's done a lot. His channel's really big and everything, but he posted something recently. He turned down, and it's 5 minutes long. It's short. He turned down a very big deal to make an animated series for a major streaming service. And this video is him explaining in no uncertain terms why fuck that noise, fuck these streaming services, anti-capitalism, like this is the rot at the core of society. Like he takes a very principled stance around why he does not want to take that money and how instead he is going to just make a feature film himself, self-funded with his friends, and he's not gonna like share updates and talk about it and do the whole social media thing. He's basically just gonna do it because he wants to create. He has the rare opportunity of having the resources to try it, and I think any of you who are creating content out there, this is worth a watch because it's very similar to the GeekNights philosophy. Like we're not gonna do the kinds of things.
Streaming services, but he's on YouTube, which is basically the same thing.
No, well, YouTube, he makes money indirectly from YouTube, but also Patreon. But
I'm just saying, like, his videos are on. This isn't a guy who's like put his videos on his own CDN and it has
no, because nobody can afford to do that
somewhere. Right?
Nobody can afford to do that. But the difference is taking money from a streaming service to make content for them directly, where they have creative control.
One difference between YouTube and say Netflix, right, is that on YouTube, as long as you follow their rules, you can just upload whatever. No, YouTube doesn't come to you and tell you what video to make, right?
Yeah, it's just the place to put the video.
Right. The algorithm sort of suggests to you what video to make more money, but you don't have to do that. You can make you can make less money or no money or rebuff the algorithm or whatever.
He really does ignore that algorithm
Netflix,
too, as he's talked about before.
Netflix tells you what to make, right? You can't just upload whatever you want to Netflix. That doesn't go.
But he very succinctly
Max
just explains at the right level of detail why he didn't take this deal and kind of what's wrong with those kinds of deals. And as an aside, he complains about the kinds of things in media that Scott complains about, almost word for word in the middle, about TV versus cinema. And I wish him well because I think he has the rare opportunity to do this kind of thing. So that's my thing of the day.
So my thing of the day, did you know, speaking of YouTube, YouTube has games. Did you know that? If you go to youtube.com/playables, there's all these games that you can just play in YouTube. And I mean,
Netflix has that too.
Right. I tested that on just in a browser. Obviously, it's going to work, right? But I tested it like in the YouTube app. Also works. I didn't yet test it in the YouTube, like on the Apple TV to see if that works. But it might. I think a good chance it will work. It's basically if you want to go to the olden days of like crappy Flash games in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, you should go to YouTube Playables because that's what's in there. A bunch of crappy games that are just like Flash games. But one of them is actually officially licensed Pac-Man Superfast. And it says it's Superfast.
It did not. I played it. It does not get what it doesn't even get fast.
It gets faster than normal Pac-Man.
Not faster enough. I expected this too.
I would not call it super fast.
This needed to escalate an order of magnitude faster than it did for me to call it super fast. It's just regular fast.
It's regular fast Pac-Man. But if you ever feel like playing Pac-Man, just regular old Pac-Man, and you might not have a Pac-Man on hand, this is probably the handiest Pac-Man that you can just get.
Yeah.
Right? It's like any device you have that can go to YouTube, which is basically everything, right? Is now a Pac-Man player, along with a whole bunch of other crappy Flash equivalent games. And some of those other games might be good. I didn't check them all, but the thumbnails didn't look great. I wonder, this is like a thing YouTube must have done once and like left up and has forgotten.
I feel like YouTube and Netflix and a bunch of services all tried this and no one ever talked about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the problem is you couldn't really, their idea was like, hey, it's like people are on their phone, right? They're open up Netflix to watch Netflix, but they also play games on their phone. If we can get them to play those like Flappy Bird or whatever the hell or Pac-Man inside of the Netflix app instead of on an icon that's next to Netflix on the same level on their phone, then we can entrap those users.
Yep.
And that was the whole, right? That's their thinking. Everyone's trying to be the everything app, right? But it's like, no, you can't. You're not going to do games better than the Apple App Store. People are going to get the game there. Why would they put Netflix and then open Netflix and pay a Netflix subscription and then get the game? That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen.
So in the meta moment, we will be live at PAX West 2025 with at least one panel. We are doing a brand new one. We're continuing that Mastering Game Mechanics series that we started in 2011, and then we did the third video in that series in like 2020, 2021. But now we're doing them. We threatened we're going to make a panel or a talk about every single game mechanic one by one. We did worker placement. So now on Monday, 1 p.m. in the Firebird Theater on the 5th level at PAX West, we'll be talking about auction and bidding mechanics. And we're writing that panel, and this episode is kind of our brainstorming and spitballing of what we're going to talk about in that thing. The video of our previous one of our panels from PAX East, The Everlasting Game, is on YouTube in full with slides as of a couple days ago.
And the book club book.
The book club book.
A long title I can't remember.
Everything for Everyone, an oral history of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072. We will be doing the show on that book Thursday. And
July 10th.
Yep. It's there are good things to say about it. There are other things to say about it. It is a deeply frustrating work at the end of the day.
I think we both, based on the vibes of what little we have said, I think we 99% agree on this book.
As if you didn't listen to the previous episode of GeekNights, the People's Pile. I just cannot get the People's Pile out of my head.
Yeah. There are two possible selections for the next book club book that I've already selected. Rim will choose which of them will actually be the next book club book. One of them I have completed reading in full. So I have a 50-50 shot of Rim just choosing a book I've already now read. And a 50-50 shot of going to read the second book, which I probably would have read anyway.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens on Thursday.
All right, so let's get to the main bit. So we're going to do a panel on this, but today we're just going to talk about the topic overall. We definitely can't go fully deep on everything, and this is sort of an open structure, but on June 15th, 2010, we did an episode of Geek Nights on supposedly bidding games, and we talked about like hoity-toity and for sale, and that was a long, long time ago.
Those are good games.
They are. I don't
mostly how to play them.
Yep, I barely remember them. I didn't remember that we'd ever reviewed them.
I just forget how to play them.
But I became aware of auctions as a game mechanic because my family, but I grew up from before I was born, my family
played Monopoly the right way.
Oh, well, we played board games. When I was born, my family already had an extensive collection of tabletop games, like big one.
I didn't know Monopoly had auctions. I mean, obviously, until I think in middle school at a friend's house, the dad worked for IBM, and they had an IBM PS1, and the PS1 had Prodigy on it, but it also had a Monopoly, which I could probably find on the internet if I looked hard enough. Monopoly for the IBM PS1, and in that Monopoly, it enforced the rules correctly, and it had the auctions in there. And so that's how I learned. I was like, what is this? Are we playing Monopoly wrong? Why does this game have these different rules than what we play with?
Yep. So also, my uncle had Mule on a computer. Mm-hmm. So I encountered Mule in the early days. So I got acquainted with and good at the concept of auction and bidding in games between Monopoly and Mule. And even at a very young age, it was a deep point of contention. I was called a liar many times by my idiot peers, little kids in elementary school who played Monopoly wrong, and I was always mad about it as a kid. And the thing that really struck me was that Monopoly, what I recognized at a single-digit age, was that if you played Monopoly without the auctions, the game took a lot longer, and it was random who won. If you played Monopoly with the auctions, unless every single person at the table was smart above a certain line, whoever was smart would just win Monopoly despite all the randomness because the auctions were so powerful and people are so bad at them.
Right. So to auctions, any kind of auction that you have, right, is basically a system whereby some good, some object, something, some property, right, of some kind is going to change hands. Whoever currently possesses it is dispossessing themselves of it unless there's literally no buyers, right? If anyone at all wants it, I guess depending on the system, if anyone wants it at least enough, they're going to get it. But we don't have a set price like in a store where the person has decided and announced, I am going to give this up for X. Anyone who can give me X, they can have it, right? We're not doing that. Instead, it's open-ended, and there will be some competition of some sort amongst the potential buyers in which that we will instead discover the price. The price doesn't necessarily have to be, usually is just a number in a currency, but it doesn't have to be. It could be any price, right?
Yep.
Like I'll bid my left pinky and a lump of grass. I don't know, whatever. It's like, give me that, all right? But that's what an auction is. And so when you think about auctions, there's really three different sort of at least three different angles to look at them, right? Which is you're buying something in an auction, right? You want a thing that is available for auction. What should you do?
Yep.
You have a thing. You want to get rid of the thing, but you want to get the most in exchange. And so you're going to use an auction as a possible way to achieve that goal. And then three, you are studying auctions themselves mathematically, how they work, who they favor, which ones are good in which situations, etc. And a lot of things in games could arguably or are auctions, but people don't realize that they're auctions.
What I'm about to say is either a fourth thing, but I feel like you could stretch it into three. If you could shape it to fit right. They are used in games extensively and also in systems. Like imagine an auction house that does not know the value of a thing, but they're not trying to get a profit. There are nonprofit auction houses that are achieving some equilibrium in a market. This is where you basically want to auto balance that game. You have a game where cards have more, like imagine Magic the Gathering. Some cards are better than other cards. That's just how Magic is.
Right.
So
you're a game designer, and you don't want to have to decide on like, yes, it will cost 5 energy to use this ability. If you put an auction in there, then the players in the course of play will determine how much energy it costs to use that ability.
Yep.
And now you don't have to balance the game. Instead, player skill balances the game, but also leaves it open to be unbalanced in an absence of player skill.
Yep, and that is the sort of deep disconnect. Tons of tabletop games add auctions or auction-adjacent things to balance something that they cannot or are not willing to try to balance themselves, which is fair. But auctions are so hard for humans to be good at that as a result, any game that does that can very easily become just an auction game and nothing else matters. Case in point, Power Grid. The auction is all that matters. The rest of the game, unless you are bad at games, you can play basically perfectly. But the auction is the only thing that matters. Like when we play Power Grid, we played the newer Power Grid, the different Power Grid recently, and it tweaked the auctions a little bit, but even then, I think we still played it almost perfectly because we were still pretty close to dollar tight.
Well, I think this is why we like games with auctions so much, is because auctions raise the skill cap on games very, very high.
Yeah.
But also, auctions, even if the players aren't anywhere near the skill cap, they create a devastating separation between players who are good and not good, right? If you're bad or you're unskilled or ignorant or unknowledgeable or you're lacking in any way regarding the game, you're going to fail at the auctions and your score, your performance at the game will be terrible, right? And so when there is a mix of players who have a variance of ability, knowledge, skill, whatever, that shows up on there's auctions in the game, that shows up in the final results like very frequently.
Yep, and I find most of the games I have played enough to understand them that involve any amount of auctions and bidding become solely about the auctions and bidding.
I mean, yeah, but obviously, if every player is good at the auctions, right, it doesn't make the game somehow bad. Instead, it makes the game fierce.
Yep, it gets to the point, because then you get to the point to where someone will do a squirrely thing in an auction to try to bluff, to make someone else think they value something differently. That's the kind of thing that wouldn't work on someone who's not good at auctions. And but also, auctions are really fucking fun. Good at them, bad at them. You sit someone down in front of Mule, or you're using you're driving your guy up and down and like auctioning and bidding in real time. That is really fun. Like, I love games that have auctions in them just for the mechanics of it, because I'm really good at auctions in some games. I'm not great at real-time auctions. Case in point, Off-World Trading Company. I like that game. I am so bad at it, but I am heartened by the fact that all of you are somehow worse at it.
Yeah.
But again, devastating. Like, I'm really bad at that game. Like, I can't beat the easy AIs, but I can beat you guys pretty reliably, as when we played it before.
I think if that was a turn-based game, I would be much better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, one of the things that makes auctions and bidding so hard is that valuation. Determining the value of a thing in the real world is a very, very, very hard problem. It's one of the fundamental problems that societies as a whole try to grapple with. You think you and your fucking board game are going to figure that out? Entire civilizations have failed over this concept.
Right. So, from the 4 aspects, right? So the first aspect, you're buying something in an auction, right? There's many different auction types. I don't know if we'll have time in the Geek Nights episode to talk about all the types.
Oh,
but,
definitely not.
right. There's a thing you want that is up for auction. If you don't want it, well, then you don't participate, doesn't matter, right? So you definitely want it to some degree. And
unless you're bidding up to raise the price for other people because you have an opportunity cost situation. You want to harm the other person who's bidding because you know they need it.
Yeah, but that means you still want it because your wanting of it is the denying it to someone else.
True,
right?
But you don't want it. Like, you don't want it so much that you get it. You just want to drive the price up. Getting it, if you win the auction, you lose.
Well, not necessarily, right? It's like, you might say, look, if I bid 25, whatever's right, and I win it, it's like, I didn't necessarily win the thing. I have to be satisfied with I paid 25 to make sure Rim didn't get it, and you have to be okay with that.
Well, I guess what it really is you are deciding, here is how much that thing is worth to me, regardless of whether or not I pull the trigger on it.
Right. Either how much the thing is worth to you or how much it's worth to you to not have someone else have it.
Yep.
Anyway, but the main thing, no matter what type of auction it is or anything else that you have to do as a buyer is valuate, right? You have to assess or assay or whatever it is. You have to be able to accurately and properly determine the value of the thing in terms of another thing, right?
Yep.
It's like, how many slices of pizza is the car worth, right? And it's like, well, you have to know how much a slice of pizza is worth and how much to you and to the person you're selling the car. You have to know how much the car is worth to the person selling the car and to you and to others, right? You might, and in general, amongst all the participants and society, what is the value of these things now, into the future, relative to each other, the thing being sold and whatever is being accepted as bidding, usually just money, right?
Yep.
So how many dollars, but it could be something else.
Yeah, but dollars are complicated because, the few things have truly intrinsic or even near intrinsic value. And in tabletop games in particular, like, a good example is Sidereal Confluence, Trading and Negotiation in the Elysian Quadrant, which we reviewed a long time ago. It has like 5 different colors of cubes that are all worth different amounts of each other. But the only thing that wins you the game are victory points. So you're basically saying, how many victory points can I get out of these 5 other types of things in relation to each other? What is my path to get the most victory points out? So you could say that victory points are the only fundamentally intrinsic value in a board game, because a board game is an ortho game where the only thing that matters is how the players are ranked at the end, and the players are ranked by victory points. And before you say not every game has victory points, as Scott pointed out when we were talking about this a couple days ago, you can make any video game or any board game or any game have victory points with a little bit of math.
Yep. Yeah, almost every game that doesn't have victory points, it's hard for me to think of a game where I can't explain what the victory points are, right? For example, Super Mario Brothers. It's a single-player game, but whatever. Yep. The victory points is how many pixels to the right have you moved?
Yep.
Right? So how close are you? It's a big line from World 1-1 to 8-4. How close are you? Along that line, pixels to as you move to the right, the warp zone gets you a ton of victory points because you move to the right. It's like, and maybe you decide you want to play a score attack. Well, there you go. Your victory point is a score.
Yep.
Maybe you're doing a speed run. Okay, your victory point is the time on the clock.
Pretty much every sport, the time on the clock inverted for races, like the goals you scored in a hockey game, those are just the victory points.
Right. So it's like, yeah, in the world of gaming, any kind of in the world at large, all kinds of things apply with auctions, because there's no such thing as victory points in life, sadly. But in the world of games, all auctions you can when you're valuating the things being purchased, the currencies being used to purchase, you can convert everything to victory points, and that is the key to success as a buyer. Is to say, okay, this amount of money in my hand, I could get 3 victory points with it just directly or using this other method. But if I successfully buy this good at auction, this wooden cube, then that could get me 5 victory points. So it's worth it to bid 3 because that's getting 2 victory points effectively if I win the auction. But it's not worth it for me to bid 6, because then I would be spending 6 victory points to get 5, and that would be losing a victory point. So now I know how much to bid on the wooden cube.
But this is where this gets complicated really, really, really fast. An example, not from it's not an auction bidding game in the same sense, but in St. Petersburg, because we always use this as an example, earlier in the game, dollars are worth a lot because they give you the opportunity to do many other things. So $1 in the second round of the game is probably worth a lot of victory points, but calculating that number is almost impossible. But as the game goes on, dollars become less valuable, but sometimes they temporarily increase in value, like when a certain round is going to come up where all the squares are going to come out on the board. But toward the end of the game, I almost said something. The orange cards become very valuable. And at the very end of the game, the only thing that matters are the square cards that come out in the final round, and money is basically worthless. And so calculating how many victory points $1 is worth is honestly almost impossible. You can't do simple calculations.
You have to do it at the moment, in the moment, right? It's like everything's in flux. Everything you have to decide is always in the present, because forget games, just in life, the present is the only thing that exists. The past and the future do not exist. Only the present exists.
That's
all you can do.
Total aside. So have you encountered this relatively new but possible to be tested theory that there isn't three-dimensional space?
But that doesn't matter for actual life. So
one argument it makes is that there actually is no such thing as a present. There is a future, there is a past, but there is no present.
In your physics textbooks, and you live your life in a present, so that's all you can deal with.
But even that in a bidding and auction game, the past, you have a past of how has the game evolved up to this point? You've seen how things were worth, who's buying what. Scott's collecting a lot of wood over there. He's definitely wood's worth something to him.
Right, there's information to be gleaned from the past, but you can't do anything in the past. It's already done.
Yep, and any information you try to glean from the future is your own simulated speculation about what's going to happen in the game. Scott might dump all his wood and ruin the wood market, and now I'm fucked if I try to take that into account.
Okay, so that's buying in an auction, is correctly determining the value of things. That's what's being tested. Do you know how valuable the wooden cube is, or are you a fool who thinks it's worth a lot when it's not worth anything, or you think, it's okay, it's not worth anything. Oh shit, it was really valuable, and that's bad. Okay, so you're selling something at an auction. Well, when you're selling something at an auction, there's usually rules. I know we talked about this in the news, but rules will govern the auction. You can't just sort of, decide to give it to like the second bidder, unless it's a shady ass auction. Right? Lawyers come out for that kind of shit, right? I've actually seen recent lawsuits about things like that, like Diamond, where this bankruptcy auction. Anyway, so as a seller, you have the ability to not necessarily choose who's going to buy, but you can choose the rules of the auction. And you want to choose the rules of the auction that will get you the biggest return for your sale, right? Now, if you just set a price, a flat price for something, that's the price you're going to get, or not sell because you set your price too high, in which case that's up to you, not have to be the valuator. And you would rather not be the valuator because that puts you in a position of weakness. So you force the buyer to be the valuator.
Yep.
Also, you force competition amongst multiple buyers. If there aren't more than one buyer, any auction you choose is going to be a bad time because they could just bid one. One
of my favorite things in games that have auctions is when there is an option whereby the person selling the thing gets fucked because nobody buys it. I love when that happens.
That's always a good time. But as long as there's at least two buyers, they're going to compete who both want it. They will compete somewhat to some degree and get the price up. And
oh my God. I remember, I'm not getting the guy. There was the guy when we used to play with those board games for that brief period with Moz upstate, where he'd always be weirdly competitive with you. And anytime we played a game that had auctions and bidding, he would he'd sit there forever and hem and haw, and then he'd bid 14, and you would just immediately bid him by one. And then he'd sit there and stew. And it was to the point where you could basically trick him into spending ludicrous amounts of money. He just couldn't see what you were doing to him.
I wasn't even doing that. I was mostly just, I had my number.
Yeah. I know I'll pay up to 40 for this.
At the beginning, I valued the thing being auctioned. And as long as it was still below my number, I can immediately just say the next highest number in that kind of auction.
Because you don't want to say the number you're actually willing to pay, because you might be able to get it for less, especially if the seller's stupid.
Right. So as a seller, how do you choose which kind of auction you're going to use, right? You could do silent auctions.
Dutch auctions.
You could do a Dutch auctions. And it's
once around.
Yep. There's all kinds of different methods, and it depends, right? If you're selling a quantity of goods, let's say you have 100 fish, right? A Dutch auction might be good because people can put in bids like, hey, I want to get the first pick of the fish, and I need 30 fish. And so so this guy's paying the most, so he gets 30 fish first. All right, who now wants fish? It's like someone else comes in. It's like they're paying less than that guy, but they want 50. All right, so you take fish next, and you go down the. It's good for when you have a limited number of something.
And I think not to go, because we could spend forever talking about all the different kinds of auctions, but I think the board game Modern Art is the perfect example of this, because the game is about when you're selling something and everyone takes turns selling, you choose what kind of auction to use to sell the thing.
The thing you sell has the kind of auction built into it.
Yeah, but choosing which thing to sell, which auction type it is, looms large in the decision. And if you play this game, these auctions feel like they're not that different from each other in terms of mechanics. They're all very simple to describe. And yet, the outcomes with these auction types, despite the fact that all the players are playing a relatively simple game and know how it works, if you do the once around versus the real, the different kinds of auctions with the same group of players, with the same thing for sale, even with those players having the exact same information, they will give wildly different valuations because they don't understand what they're doing.
Not only that, but I think in Modern Art, it's a game where you start with very little information.
Yep.
And so information is essential to valuation. Right. And so in Modern Art, some of the auctions are very revealing in terms of they help you determine how much other people value a thing.
Yep.
Right? Because like all yellow cards have equal value, effectively. All red cards have equal value, right? So it's like, okay, we'll use this kind of auction, like just an open auction, and that will help us figure out how valuable everyone else thinks yellow is. And now when we do like a once around on yellow, now I have information, I know what to bid. But maybe you didn't do the once around first. No one really knows what yellow is worth. And you do a once around on yellow, which requires you to have a lot of information because you've only got one chance to make your bid. And no one else has good information, including you. And that's an opportunity to rip someone off or be ripped off.
Yeah. One of my favorite kinds of auctions remains the one-time blind bid, 1, 2, 3, reveal how much money's in your hand.
That's the good time.
Because either way is equally fun. Either you all flip over, and what happens in our group often is like 3 of us have bid the exact same amount. And we all look at each other because we all made the exact same calculation.
It's great when someone has just like $1 zillion, another person has like $1.
Yep. When there's a big divide and someone's way off from everybody else, either they're a genius or they just fuck themselves. And it's really funny either way.
It's also just the suspense of it. Like you have nothing to go on, and you're all saying no information.
Amun-Re has the most fun one of that type, just because that's the one where you bid and you're revealing how much you're willing to sacrifice to the gods, which not only determines how much of a benefit you get from the gods, like the highest bidder gets more, but it sets a meter that determines how the next round will go. So players have a lot of complex motivation in how they want that auction to go down. Auctions and bidding are just so fun. But I guess what really strikes me is the information in most auctions in games are either there's no information asymmetry and it's just the players are either good or bad at evaluating the things, but the games that are really good is where the information is asymmetric. Some players know things other players don't, and then part of the game becomes trying to glean information about what the other players know via the game and via the auctions. That's like peak bidding game.
Yep. And then, of course, if you're a game designer and you're going to incorporate auctions into your game, you first of all have to study all the different types of auctions and know which ones are good for what.
Yep.
You have to recognize things that are auctions that might not seem like it, right? We talked about like, drafting. Drafting is an auction.
Yep.
Right? It's just, instead of bidding, you're taking turns just choosing, but it's still an auction type, right?
Yeah.
You're evaluating, right? It's like you have first pick in a draft. You better know which thing is the most valuable thing. Otherwise, someone who with a second draft pick is going to get a better thing than you did, and you're screwed. So
I won a lot of money playing fantasy football over the years with coworkers because I would only ever play if they agreed to do auctions for the draft instead of just going around, because everyone runs out of money real quick because they're bad at it. I've won thousands of dollars over the years doing this.
Yeah, I did a non-money fantasy hockey, which is the first fantasy I did since last millennium and last season. And I just followed a spreadsheet from some experts, and I let the spreadsheet make all my decisions, and I didn't care about which team the player was on. I didn't care if it was a player I hated. I didn't care about any of that. I just went full spreadsheet. Spreadsheet decides, math only. And I came in second place mostly because and I could have won, except there was some, luck involved, right?
Yep.
So, anyway. You're a game designer and you got to know the types of auctions, right? And you have to use the auctions in the parts of the game that are appropriate, right? So when there are objects in the game, resources or whatever it is, and players are going to compete for them in some way, it's like, well, okay, how are we going to let the players, divide up these resources, right? Do we want to challenge their valuation abilities or not?
Yep,
right?
and that's a really important question because, as we said earlier, if you challenge those abilities, that will likely be the sole determining factor if there's an imbalance, and nothing else in your game will matter.
And like Rim mentioned earlier, the balancing, using it to get out of having to balance something, right? So you're making cards for your CCG, and every card costs a certain number of energy to use. You have to balance the cards and say, okay, this guy's a 1/1 monster. He should cost 1 mana, right? This one should cost 2 mana. And it's like you balance the cards, and then you notice, hey, no one's using that card ever. It must be, too expensive. We'll cut off the cost. We'll do some errata, and we'll patch our game. It's a video card game, and now everyone's using it. It's too OP, right? It's like, well, what if instead of having a set cost, you have some sort of system for determining the cost? Like if you play, a PAX game like PAX-MAN, there's like a market to buy cards where you have to spend, right? Where new cards that come into the market are expensive. Cards that have been in the market for a while no one wants get cheaper and cheaper. Effectively, that's an auction of some kind. And now no card has a set cost printed on it, but players end up paying more for the more powerful cards and paying less for the weaker, less powerful cards. And you didn't have to balance your game, at least not in that respect. And that could be really handy if that's the difficult part of the game that you're designing. If you just throw an auction in there instead, I recommend it. Yeah,
but some of the most sublime games are the ones where there are effectively multiple auctions, and they loom large in the game. Like 18xx games, the auctions are most of the game. Like that is where
there's the private auction at the start of the game, which sometimes different games do it differently. And then it's in turn order, but the stock round is still effectively an auction because you only have limited actions before it's a draft kind of, right? So that's also an auction.
The thing that really strikes me, I don't know how much we'll get into this in the panel just because we only have an hour, but it really does strike me how often I encounter people my entire life playing games where they're really smart and they're really good at games generally. But then whenever there's an auction in a game, like I remember a friend of ours, this happens so many times I lose track. We're playing modern art specifically, which you might be good or bad at the auctions, but there is an easily calculable max value of those paintings. Like in every round, even with the information asymmetry, you can calculate trivially a maximum possible value. There is no way the thing could be worth more victory points than X. And I have routinely seen people bid more than that for a painting in a situation where it could not even be a spoiler of denying it to someone else.
Right. And this gets into the discussion of auctions in real life, right? And pricing psychology, right? You've seen in capitalism every dirty trick and thing to get people to overpay for whatever. Right? It's like, and there's just so many factors, and people's minds are weak.
Like that guy I talked about before. Really smart at games otherwise, but like Scott saying the number so quickly would like get him mad, and you could see it instilled in his brain this idea of I have to beat Scott in the auction now. Right.
And when valuations of a thing are not completely objective, right? Or just it's like, you could take the same wine in 2 bottles and put one in a fancy bottle and one in a cheapy bottle, and you get someone to pay a lot more for the fancy one. It's the same thing, right? And then they drink it, and they drink both of them, and they swear that one of them tastes better, right? And it's like, human brains are subject to these kind of influences. And so if you don't have an absolutely objective measure of value available to you, then you're going to be subject to incorrectly evaluating things and then bidding for them improperly. And so if you're in a board game or in a real life auction, you need either an objective mathematical system to determine the value or possible value of a thing, or at least a heuristic to estimate the value of a thing.
In almost any game, my heuristic is I decide the most I'm willing to pay for the thing, if nothing else, And then I make whatever decisions during the auction, but I know I will not pay more than X under any circumstances.
In Power Grid, I just have a very simple algebra formula where I say, well, that's how much money I am willing to spend on a power plant that is an upgrade for me in this auction. That is the number. I decide it before I even see the power plants.
Yep.
Of course, you do see them because there's futures. But it's like, that's how much I'm willing to pay. I've already got the number in. I just don't reveal that number because that would be putting myself at disadvantage of giving other people free information. And then when the auction happens, people say numbers. If it's the power plant that I want, if the number is still lower than my number, I say the lowest number I can say. That's all I do. And other people, it's like, if you're going by something less than that, if you're just saying that feels strong, I want to win it, so I'll keep, and I have this much money, therefore I'll bid. It's like, no, you're done, right?
Yep.
You cannot operate that way. You're just going to get hosed. You're going to get ripped off in real life ending games.
Yep, you at least got to have a number in mind or you're fucked. The trap I see people fall into the most often is they mistake winning the auction for being an intrinsically good thing. It's like they get caught up in, I am in this auction, I am going to win it. It's almost like they get tricked into thinking winning means it's good. You don't always want to win every auction. In fact, in good board games, losing a lot of auctions is often the way to win the game. As soon as you try to win the auction, in and of itself, you have strayed from the golden path and you're going to lose that game hard.
Yeah, it's only a good idea to win the auction if you paid a good price for the thing, because then what you win is the difference between what you paid and the value of the thing that you won.
Congratulations, you beat Scott and paid 3x for a wind power plant that's already obsolete. Good job, you won. You won, buddy.
Yeah, winning the auctions is not winning, and that is definitely another thing I think is a feeling thing for, so
real-time auctions really fuck people up with that. How many times have we played Mule where someone would literally just get too excited and just start running ahead because it feels good and they're ahead of everybody, and then auction's over, you're F now.
I mean, it puts even if you have an objective measure for your valuation, if you can't think fast, there's this pressure on you, right? Again, it's a psychological thing. Auctions are fundamentally a tool for the seller to extract more from the buyer, right? And using every dirty psychological trick to do so. And so, a real-time auction pressures people into bidding, right? That guy hits that hammer and it's like, going once. It's like, oh shit, FOMO now, right? It's like you're pressuring people into coughing up more cash, as opposed to, a silent auction where, it's a secret and silent auction. Everyone just writes down what they're willing to pay, and whoever's willing to pay the most wins, and that's the end, right? And that's much more fair and much less manipulative, but also less lucrative for the seller. So,
because I back when we used to go to anime cons, I rarely won anything in the auction. Sometimes they were silent and hidden, sometimes they were silent and open, but I rarely won anything in those auctions at the back of the artist alley because I wasn't willing to pay that much. But when they were secret auctions, the number I wrote was a worthless number because someone is always going to spend more. Like, I never got anything because I wrote reasonable numbers I actually wanted to pay.
I used, to win anything at those, I used the raw strategy, which is basically like, hey, I'll find something that I want. I want it more than 0, right? And hopefully no one else wants it at all.
Yeah.
And so then I can get it at a very reasonable number. And if I don't, okay, I bid and nothing was lost. Except the auction for me. Who cares?
You don't want to overpay for Dakla.
Right. And I won.
Fucking Dakla's the worst one.
At least one item that way. So, and I still have it.
All right. I
might have won another one that I forgot.
I think the challenge with this panel, unlike the worker placement one, will be...
It's too much.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to cut out being good at auctions, except briefly talking about it, because that alone could be an hour. I think
all the types of auctions. We can't go over each one with a slide each.
Yeah,
I think
I think we deeply talk about a small number of auction types, and then we loosely talk about a larger number, and that's it from the
maybe
examples.
even just two, just to show that different auction different auction types are.
I could see
so different.
I could almost see we take two different auctions from modern art and just go through a full actual example, like with slides. I feel like that could be good. Anyway, I think we've gone on long enough, and I'm desperately hungry, and I can't see out the window because I closed the shades if the thunderstorm happened or not.
It's
real
gloomy,
dark here,
but it is dry.
All right.
I mean, it's humid but it's obviously not.
Oh yeah, the amount of water coming out of the air conditioners outside is like a hose. And end stream. All right, we're good.
Our dehumidifier is very good in case there's like a